Hey everyone, let's wait a couple of minutes to let others join in. Meanwhile, you can fill in the meeting minutes. Please add your names to the attendees list. And if you have any topics to discuss today, please add them to the meeting minutes as well. Before we get started, I think we have a newcomer in the call. Mario, is this your first time on our calls?
Yes, that's right.
Would you like to introduce yourself to the community and get introduced to the community?
Yeah, sure. Just a second. Yeah, thank you. Yes, so my name is Mario Arriaga. I'm from Puebla. I'm from Mexico. And I am a software development engineer in test at F5. And
Thank
that's
you,
all.
Mario.
I joined because I was part of the open source community event being held this week. And well, it's great to be part of this community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mario. Welcome to the Layer community. Really nice to have you here. And also, Manav, is this your first time on this call?
No, I have attended on the development meeting. It's my first time.
Oh, all right. So the folks who join different meetings are different. So would you like to introduce yourself here as well?
Yeah. So my name is Manav Kapoor. Currently, I am pursuing my BTech undergrad studies pre-final year from IIT Jodhpur. I am a person who likes to see things how abstractly they are. I love to contribute in open source, and I aim to learn more from the community. That's why I'm joining this.
That's great. Great to have you here, Manav. Welcome to the community.
Thank you.
All right. We are 4 after and let's get started. Welcome everyone to the Meshery development meeting. Today is the 6th of October, and before we get into the topics, we have a couple of announcements. So as you know, KubeCon is right around the corner. So Meshery is participating in KubeCon's Bug Bash. So Bug Bash is an event that is hosted by CNCF and Sonatype. So what this event is it is basically an event where contributors can come in and try to fix bugs in CNCF projects. So Meshery, being a CNCF project, is participating in Bug Bash this time. So existing contributors can also participate. So if you are a contributor and if you are on this call, this might be a good event to showcase your skill and get some bragging rights. Yeah, so basically this event starts at KubeCon. So next week, and you can there will be a couple of open bugs from Meshery in the bug bash, and basically you get points for fixing bugs, and there is a leaderboard obviously. So the person who has the top points wins the event and gets prizes at the end. So you can check that out. The links are in the comment as well as in the meeting minutes. And we also have project office hours for Meshery at KubeCon. So we will be live at 13th October at 2:30 p.m. Pacific time. So the project office hours is when people can come in and ask questions to maintainers. So if you would like to be a part of the project office hours, please signal in chat or Slack, and we'll try to add as many people into our project office hours as we can. Another update is that Nitish Karthik, who is on the call today, is nominated as Meshery maintainer. So if you haven't seen Nitish's work, Nitish has been focused primarily on Meshery UI, and he has been driving forth some of the recent initiatives in Meshery UI, especially state management, and he has been working on mesh map. So uh, if you haven't seen his work, do check it out. Nitish has been nominated as a maintainer. So I see a lot of overwhelmingly positive responses to Nitish's nomination. So Nitish, I think uh, congratulations are in order. And there is also a mailing list that is being circulated among the maintainers, and you got a lot of positive responses uh, there as well. All right, so let's move on to the topics for today. First up, we have Barik, who will be walking us through the Meshery's messaging framework. So Barik, without wasting any time, I give it to you.
All right, sure. Thank you, Navendu. Okay. I am audible, right?
Yes, you're.
Yeah, sure. All right. So I'll share my screen. Um, all right. You guys can see my screen, right?
Almost. We're about 2 seconds away. There it is. By the way, just as a public service announcement, I think most half of you know what I'm about to say. The other half don't. But the nice thing that just happened is that Barak made a $2 donation to the community pot, which is he asked the question, "Can you see my screen?" And we've just made it a public pet peeve or a public matter of efficiency to phrase that differently, such that like it's something like, assuming you can see my screen, and you just kind of keep going. Yeah. So anyway, so just
all right. Thank you, Lee.
yeah. Yeah.
Sure. All right. Okay. So I'll start by giving you guys some context on what I am working on. So currently this is about the broadcast implementation of the Meshery overall. So currently what we have is that we have like several Go channels that are inside our repo currently, but at some point I think what we have some issues having that. So the issue that we are having for these Golang channels is that some of the channels are blocking the other channels, and then it seems like this is the thing that we don't want to have basically. So what we are doing here is that we want to implement a like a big pile channel, and then going forward, the whole, like, if any kind of system that wants to listen to this message channels, they can just add their like individual channels and then listen to it. So basically we want to try to implement is that we want to have like one big channel for the whole messaging that we have inside our system. Yep. So
previously we have the the design spec, but I think yeah, so we cannot have the design spec previously, and then now we are currently underway for the implementation. So here today I'll just let you guys know like how the overall architecture works and then how the overall flow works basically. Does it sound good? Okay, assuming that it's good. So all right, so firstly, the architecture wise, so I've made a draw IO diagram that we can it can help us like imagine like how the overall architecture works. So we have five instances here: the broadcaster and then Meshery server, Meshery UI, Golang plugin, and then Meshery extension. So we the main thing here is the Meshery server. So this broadcaster is the one that we just implemented. So inside the Meshery server, there are multiple instances of the system. So you can see that it's kind of weird that this Meshery server is the one that publishes the image and then listen to the image also. So if you kind of like zoom in into the Meshery server, there are actually multiple instances of systems. So this Meshery server is that this is like a bunch of systems and we just kind of group it. So it's not really that weird. Yeah. How do you understand? So in this system is that we kind of like create this broadcaster and then the Meshery extension also will listen to this broadcaster through the broadcaster instance that we've passed using the Golang plugin. So you can see that the Meshery server listens to this broadcaster and then Meshery extension listens to this broadcaster as well. Yep. So after the the after they listen to the broadcaster, if the message that they wanted to have, for example, they can implement some kind of like filtering. So this message is coming from what source and then what type. So if any specific kind of like message that they wanted to, they can listen to that, and then if the Meshery UI requests any kind of like subscription, the Meshery server will give the data accordingly, basically. Yep. So this is the architecture wise for the broadcaster framework, and then the next one is the flow wise. So you can see that there is the main broadcast type that we have in the middle. So you can see that there are two types of like arrows. So that is the one that listens and then the one that publish. So we currently have two types of message at the moment. So the message is the first message is mess sync, and then the second message is the health of it. So the helper instance from the Meshery server help us to publish a message calling that there is a new message data that is published, and then so we have like a bunch of graphical subscriptions. For example, this add-on subscription, data plane subscription, and then control plane subscription. So these three subscriptions listen to that particular message. What I mean by particular message is that the message that has the type of message. And then once the message that has the type of message come in, the subscription for that particular the code for the particular subscription will run and then publish any kind of data that if there is any UI that listens to this particular subscription, then they will publish the data accordingly. Yep. So this is one for the message type, and then the other type is the operator health. So we have in the Meshery server, we also have the message type of operator health. So and then we also have the subscription for that. So this operator health from Meshery server will publish a message saying that the data the data will be like false or true. False means that the operator health is good, and then the true is means that the operator health is is good basically. So basically, every time there is a new state of operator health, it will publish a message saying that uh, what kind of health that operator is having, and then the type is health. So once there is a new data come in, and then we kind of like listen to that particular message in the operator state graphical substitution, uh, and then we publish the data accordingly to the particular message that we have on this broadcaster. Yep. Okay, so now actually what I want to do is that, so we're finished with all the Dargo.io diagram, so we can move on to the code side. So you can see that this is the where we declare the broadcaster. So the buffer size is 100. So there's actually no kind of like decision making that is happening there actually. Yep. So inside the helper, we kind of like publish the state of the. Okay, assuming that you guys can see the code. So you can see that this is the data that we publish for the operator health. So the type is health, and then the data is false, meaning that this is the particular operator state is not good. Basically, the health is not good. And then the next one is the broadcast for the mesh sync. So you can see that the type is mesh sync, and then we publish a new data. So this data is not particularly important because I don't think that we pass anything to the broadcast data right now for the mesh sync. For this particular use case, I think we just want to let the subscription know that we are having new data in the mesh sync. And then after we publish this message, you can see add-on graphical subscription that will listen to that particular message. So you can see that we plug in a new broadcast channel, and then we listen to that particular the big broadcast part that we have seen earlier. You can see that this is a new message, and then we filter by the type of mesh sync basically. Yep. So this is a type issue. Okay. So once a particular message come in, we run again the particular code that we have, and then we publish a new kind of data to the user, a new kind of data to the user UI. Yep. And then so looking into the code, right? I've seen that there is some things that we can improve on based on this, because this is actually like a very initial stage of the implementation. So I think what we can do to improve is that we can define the filter programmatically. So you have seen that the filter we have is that we kind of define it on our own, right? So I think there should be a way that we can define it programmatically, like a foolproof kind of like plan. And then the second one, if you have seen like our Meshery, so there is actually a kind of like notification, but we're not currently employing anything to it. So I think what we can do right now is, since we have implemented the broadcast implementation, what we can do is that we can integrate that with the broadcaster, so that we can also like do a subscription based on that graphical subscription. Yep.
So actually, you mean to switch from using SSE to graphical subscriptions totally?
Pardon?
I mean, like for notifications, currently we are using server sent events, right? So
Yeah.
I meant to ask if you are proposing to switch to graphical subscriptions completely.
Yep. I think that's the base use case that I can think of.
Yeah, okay, sounds good. So I just have one more question regarding the broadcaster. that like if there is no particular listener listening to a particular event, I mean like oh, and still the data is being sent by the thing which is sending, what would happen to the data? I mean like would we lose it, or will there be a way to retain that data?
Once, for example, you're not currently subscribing to that broadcaster. If you don't listen to that, then it's not really like the data is lost forever. But I think in the messaging side, the data is actually persisted, and then what we do here is that the subscription is not really like adding any kind of like new data, but instead it's like a trigger to that, like, hey, there is a new data, and then you need to like do the query all over again. So that's the
Okay.
current implementation.
Okay, yeah, it makes sense.
Nice. Hey, Barak, this is, I particularly appreciate the symmetry in your diagram. This is nice. Thank you for putting this together just in a short time frame as well. Let me ask this question. What's our critical need in this area? Like, we clearly need a robust eventing system and message framework. And it's like, as you had phrased it, like this is the initial, we have an initial implementation. We're kind of at the forefront of building out something bigger. Understanding that that is a larger item and that it's an architectural component kind of planned for v0.7, like the release that we're about to get into. And that it'll require a bit of, a bit more in-depth, to build upon this design. What do we need right now to get us by? Like, where's our most significant pain here? So at one point we had shared messages, kind of sharing the same, like we didn't have granularity to distinguish between which messages were supposed to go where, or like interleaving messages on the pipe. Are we still in that boat today? Because Meshery is still.
For your question, I think the pain points will be like to actually start implementing this kind of like broadcaster throughout the system. Yeah. So I think the initial stage is the pain points.
Okay, let me tease that out a little bit. So let's say, if there's no code change in this area, what aspect of Meshery suffers currently? I should know this.
So actually through the discussions that we have had in the past, I think there's some kind of problems having the Golang channels, like multiple Golang channels happening in the system. So I think so the plan of implementing this kind of broadcast system is that we want to eliminate that particular issue.
Nice. Okay, good. Can anyone else help refresh our memories?
Yeah, actually, so one issue is that we are mixing up the messages. The second issue, which is also quite a pain, is that right now what happens is that a blocking client can block the entire messaging data from being processed to database, and that is something that broadcast approach is sort of solving. So what it does is, of course, if a client is not listening, it will avoid and still go ahead and process data to the database, which is the desirable behavior. Or else what can happen and what does happen is if the client has blocked for any reason the channel that it's listening from, in that case, the data will not be persisted to the meshing database that Meshery holds. The consequence of it is that, okay, the client maybe does not need the data, but Meshery itself may need the data for any sort of operation. So that is another issue that this particular approach is solving. The third approach, which is a consequence of the third issue, which is a consequence of the same blocking approach, is that when meshing actually gets blocked, other operations of GraphQL also tends to block because an entire Go routine is blocked for that particular client. So these are some things that adding broadcast is sort of solving at the moment, at least.
Nice. Yeah. What's this isn't an uncommon question in software, but what's the least amount of effort that we can do? So from my part, I'm convinced we're reinventing the wheel, or like the problem is bigger than we're dipping a toe into what's a lot larger problem. We're going to want to have a lot of consistency between Meshery's components. That's why there's a messaging framework design spec that's, well, adjacent to what's being shown here, but was kind of created under, well, it was created under different pretenses, but it's trying to achieve the same thing. So for those that are in the meeting, in the chat, there's a link to this doc. It's long, or not, I mean, it's hopefully you can just read the first part and kind of get why it is that this is necessary. To date, I want to recap some of this, and just for everyone else, and then also for me to understand kind of where we are and try to help all of us plan toward, well, assuming that everyone agrees, like plan toward these two things is like, hey, to overcome the three-ish challenges that Utkarsh just mentioned, what's the least amount of effort that we can put into the existing model, this semblance of a broadcast system that has significant kind of design faults. What band-aids can we put on there, or what quick changes can we make? While this larger, more holistic approach, likely reusing an existing, message bus technology, or just a different a different, well, tried and true Golang implementation of a broadcast type system, of a multi-channel type system that we would use later on. So later on, we have a larger need to describe a couple of things. Meshery has a bunch of components. Those components need to interchange events, let each other know what's going on, talk to one another, ask each other how healthy they are, what they're doing, what they're capable of. When you deploy a given Meshery adapter, well, the adapters individual adapters are capable of different things. That's why they are adapters, because they're talking in this case to different service meshes. There are other Meshery components that more or less will fit into the adapter model. So Rudraksh, one of the maintainers on the call, he has been working on breaking out Meshery's load generators. Let me share that a little bit as well. I think this is helpful. I know this is kind of digressing for a moment, and but I'm hoping that this helps give everyone the right context and gives everyone, like, as we go into, we're at the tail end of a release, right, for .6, and that's the most important set of things for us to be focused on. But at the same time, there's a little bit of overlap toward thinking on, planning for that next release. And part of that planning would be the potential, not the potential, but ideally the breakout of load generators. There's 3 types of load generators that are supported inside of Meshery. And in order to achieve distributed load generation, meaning deployment of any number of load generators around a cluster or outside a cluster or across multiple clusters, and have those generate load to analyze service meshes, to analyze the infrastructure and the applications, the services, how they're going to respond under that different type of load generated, sourced from different vectors. That's necessary. And so these as these load generators become externalized components, they too, in some respects, they're just kind of another adapter, if you will. So as an external component, just like an adapter, they're going to need to be able to speak to the server. To the extent that anyone ever, by the way, no one else, or like if anyone, all of you that are here probably have write access to these things, you're most welcome to make copies of the slides and do what I'm doing. But don't do what I'm doing in line like this unless you're reviewing with a maintainer. It's all too easy to mess this up and then forget about it. And I'm the one that's most likely to do it. So I guess it's a good reminder for me. But these individual components, to the extent that Meshery itself is a distributed system comprised of a number of different services, different components, mesh sync, the Meshery operator, these externalized load generators, the adapters. There's at some point there'll be integrations or deeper integrations than we already have with Argo as an external system. There's plans for integrating workflow engine internal to Meshery. So depending upon how people want to deploy Meshery, these components might be speaking to one another over the network. And to the extent that that's the case, Meshery itself also has distributed systems concerns and challenges. Part of that is making sure that all of these components are in communication. We've already pulled in NATs as a core component of that messaging framework. And I would purport, I would suggest to all of us that perhaps NAT server also needs to have a larger role inside here. I think that we need to do that analysis. Maybe NATs is not the right thing, but maybe it's something else. By the way, while I'm sharing my entire screen, just so that everyone knows, just random example, yesterday I was giving an update to the CNCF Technical Oversight Committee on your initiatives. And so keep up the good work. Okay, I don't know if that hopefully helps give context to the fact that it's a larger issue. Maybe that's what most of you are taking away. And my hope is that, or acknowledging that we have a couple of issues here and now, my hope is that we're able to, as a group, identify what hopefully more surgical changes can be done to hold us off until we get to a more robust messaging framework. So Barak, sorry, geez, boy, I totally derailed you. I think not hearing much else from others, I think you mission accomplished, in terms of articulating the current state of that broadcast system that's implemented in Go. If you would be so kind as to capture in written word the three open challenges that Utkarsh explained. And then if we can, let's itemize or let's identify what we think we can do right now without forethought as to building out our own new pub subsystem, understanding that we're likely to reuse.
All right, sure.
If that's okay. Does anyone else have comment for Barak? Cool. And then lastly, Barak, I guess true to what I'd said, if you get that draw.io design graph into the Meshery architecture deck under a draft slide, that's great for being able to reference it quickly. It's good. Nice. Navendu, what do we have next?
All right. Thanks, Barik. Next up, we have a review on the v0.60 release. So we have this document which we have been bringing up for a while now. So people have signed up to test some of these actions that uses Meshery. So there hasn't been much updates here, or only a few updates. So people who have signed up to test this, please make sure to test it out. And I know that like most of you who has signed up has works other in other places, so they are busy fixing bugs and adding new features. So um, so this also means that even if a person has signed up to test a particular action, you can also others can also add their names here and test it out as well. You don't need to wait for this person to complete it. And we also have a release candidate released uh, 2 days ago. So yeah, so please test that out, test these out to these scenarios with with the latest release of Meshery. So yeah, I wanted to call out for volunteers to come in and test this out right now. We also have a release blog that is being written. So we have a lot of new features coming up for this release. So we have a release blog that explains all of this stuff. So Sain, would you like to point out which areas still need people to help out?
Yeah, sure. So we still have three of our blogs need to be written. So one is applications and then filters, and we have dynamic management UIs. Other all are, I believe that other all are coming through, but these three are still pending, and I think we'll need volunteers.
Nice. All right. Well, yeah, this is the week. So for just yeah, anyone that's on the call, you're welcome to either review something that someone else has written, or whether you contributed to these areas or not, to jump in. For my part, I'll take the last one, that beta program, the dynamic UIs as well. I think that's probably pretty hard for others to describe, and we didn't achieve all that we had desired in this release. A lot of what was achieved in this release around the dynamicism in the UIs really has to do with GraphQL and the subscriptions that are now ongoing, and the notion that the more and more of the screens of the pages in Meshery UI are just being auto updated all the time, are being I was going to say refreshed, but that sounds like you're refreshing the screen. But there's a subscription there. There's a large, obviously, like in part to what I think Nitish will talk about in a minute, there's a large architectural change for Meshery's UI planned for the .7 release. Part of that will not just be an under the hood architectural change, that's significantly happening, but it'll also be a change in the interfaces, like the widgets and the components that users are interacting with. And I know all of you, everybody has an opinion about UI, and your opinions are welcome. Like the suggestions are welcome. Right now, like the way that the user experience is structured in Meshery's UI dates back to like the .1 of Meshery, which is there was a server, there was a couple of Meshery adapters to talk to service meshes. And so the way that the navigation was set up in the menus, it was like to go click on the name of a service mesh. What the user was really clicking on was an adapter. So and that's still the case today. If in the Meshery menu, if you click on the name of a service mesh, what's happening is in real time, there's a quick exchange between Meshery server and the adapter over over Golang over gRPC to the Meshery server to ask the adapter, what are you capable of? It responds, and then the capabilities, those features of the adapter are then displayed here. So if you hit refresh, Vendu, and people watch for a moment, see where it says configure settings? That button that was displayed for way too long. Apparently, Vendu's got a lot of open tabs or whatever. But in that like really long moment, there was a gRPC interaction going on with the server, like where that thing that I just said is happening. And that's nice because it's a real, the system is dynamic in that way. So real time, you can go add another adapter. Actually, you can add 10 Istio adapters or 10 of any kind of an adapter. So Meshery supports running any number of different types of adapters, also any number of the same type of adapters. And the UI is dynamic in that way. It'll show you like multiple of the same type of adapters. So any one of you can try it. There's instructions in the docs to do it. But just a random example of like, well, but is that the best user experience? Like, do users want to be navigating how to manage service meshes by clicking on Meshery components? Like, that's probably not the right basis for determining the user experience. So there's a lot of thought and kind of work to go into the next release about really changing all this around. Actually, I think it was last week when we met, we had an extended session about UX in Meshery and how people can get involved. That recording is out on YouTube if you want to get involved there. Okay, so anyway, I don't know where we digress from. We were back on, oh yeah, here, dynamic UIs, I'll take that. Cool, did anyone?
I'll take patterns. I'll take patterns.
Was that Abhishek Kumar?
Yes.
Oh, Navinder is already up. Okay, fine.
All right. Yep. Thank you, Sain, for mentioning that. This next topic is kind of related to the docs. So, Lee, would you like to talk about the long-standing issue of versioning Meshery docs? Maybe a quick call out.
I promise to be brief. Time me. We're using Jekyll, the theme that we're using for Meshery docs. The theme that we're using is Doxy Jekyll. It's a ripoff of, or it's a copy of, or it's heavily inspired by Doxy based on Hugo. The Jekyll theme does not have built-in support for versions, like versions of the documentation. That means that Meshery docs are perpetually at latest, which is fine for the Meshery as a project now, bothersome later as many users come, run Meshery, and they want to know the difference between what they're running now and what they could be running. And so without the facility to version the docs, Meshery, this is one of the areas where Meshery needs to grow up. In concept, it's a super simple challenge. It's like ridiculously easy. It's not, yeah. And then that doesn't mean that it won't be hard for some that pick it up. So anyway, go try it out. Like, there's a lot of thought already given to it and suggestions, and there's been attempts by a couple of people in the past to make it happen. And so, yeah, go. There's no harm in trying. I encourage any of you to pick it up.
Yep, thanks, Lee. The link to the issue with all the resources is in the chat. Uh, so over to Nitesh. Nitesh, would you like to talk about the refactoring in Meshery UI?
Yeah. So okay, actually, I won't be explaining what we're trying to do here because that's what we have been doing in the last 3 weeks. So if you want to know more about what's happening here, you can go to the links that are provided in the meeting minutes. And yeah, and so actually, I would say that um, yeah, right now, like the thing that we're focusing on right now is to create components to create, first of all, to create the globally reusable components which will be building upon those things. So as a part of that, like some people have taken up initiatives and people are working on that already. And if you want to know, like we are actually tracking that in a spreadsheet, and I have also linked that, given a link to that in the meeting minutes as well. So yeah, if you're interested in contributing to this, and if you want to write contributors, you can go to this link and just put your name in there and start working on it. And all the other details regarding how, like what are the how to get started and all those stuff, like it's pretty much covered. Everything is covered in the readme file. So yeah, I would just point you guys there. And if you have if you're still stuck with something, then yeah, ping on Slack, or yeah, people would help out. So yeah, actually that's not much of an update because like people are still working on it. And yeah, it's going to be a long process. So yeah. So it's just a call out for people who are interested to start working on it.
Thank you, Nitish. As Nitish mentioned, I just shared the guide to contribute to this area. So uh, it's in the README file for in this particular feature branch. So do check it out, and the other details can be found in the meeting minutes. The link to the proposal as well as the spreadsheet that tracks things. So jump in if you are interested in working on UI. All right. Next up, Aditya, would you like to talk about the issue you are facing with the Linkerd adapter?
Yeah, so like I'm trying to work on the issue which that tries to fix the design of linked adapter, but the adapter is not connecting. By after trying many steps, I had talked with Aditya also, and he guided me through all the steps, but still the adapter is like not being connected and showing some random errors. Like
Maybe you could share your screen and
I'll do that. Wait.
uh, Aditya, like while you prepare your environment, Ashish, would you like to give an update on the SQLite migration?
Yeah, just a, a little update. I will give the link of the PR inside the chat. We are currently for persisting a few things like test profiles and SMI results, and even the user preference like the Kate's config and all. We are using Bitcast. So with my current pending PR, we would be moving completely away from Bitcast to SQLite. So the entire everything in the Meshery server would be using SQLite. So the PR is up for review. That's it. That's the update.
Hey, on that, as people think about what Ashish just said, this moving, like migrating databases, Bitcask to SQLite, there's, if you still have the link to the Meshery architecture deck that we were looking at earlier, there's a slide in that deck that talks about that. I think it's like slide 9, maybe. Not that I memorized the deck number, slide numbers or anything. But so this talks about the fact that there are, well, a few places for state, for, for data persistence. Actually, it's the footnote at the bottom of the table that Ashish is working on, Bitcask going away. Eventually then SQLite even goes away and Postgres becomes kind of the core database within Meshery. For what it's worth, one of the reasons that Bitcast is going away is because, is because we've outgrown it. And it's not. We have a bit of trouble with it as well. Meshery had used a different Golang-based, file-based data store in the past, and I can't remember the name. There's, by the way, if anyone's seen RocksDB from Facebook, that's kind of an intriguing, potentially neat one to use. In this case, the project is headed toward Postgres and away from SQLite even, in part because of what I mentioned before. There's a couple of additional architectural components to come into Meshery before it's 1.0. One of those components is a workflow engine. The workflow, and there's details on this in the community drive. That workflow engine will require Postgres. That's part of the logic. So it's also part of the logic that it's necessary. A more powerful database is needed. So just context for what Ashish is doing here.
Yeah, anyone has comments on this? There is a link to this PR in the chat. You can check it out as well. Lee, were you going to mention something?
Nope, just that, hey, the reason that we pause like that to explain stuff is on purpose so that everyone has an opportunity to go get involved, to go ask questions, suggest things. So don't hesitate. Cool. So Aditya, Mr. Subadi.
Yeah, I'll present my screen. Great.
You should be able to share your screen and take it away from me.
Just a minute. I think it requires information. Yep, is it sharing?
Yep.
Yeah, all right. So sorry. Right, so this is the 9001, like 9081 port, and I've used Docker Desktop, and it seems to be connecting successfully, but when I go into the linker tab, this happens, this unexpected error. Prior to that, I have run the command that Aditya gave me to make the linker adapter run locally in my system. So I could not figure out what's the error here. And same thing in the localhost 3000 port. When I click on the linker, this happens. Unhandled runtime error.
Yeah. Can you do this? Can you open up your terminal and do cat/ you're on a Mac, yeah, cat/ etc/hosts. With an S on the end. So, yeah, for reasons that I don't think are necessary anymore. It used to be the case, back when Meshery was just forming. There was the need to override, to have an alternative name for adapters other than localhost. And anymore, I don't believe that that's necessary in the project. So, but that old architect, that old design has persisted, and maybe we need to go change it. So the way that when you build Meshery locally, Meshery server, you run it, it comes with some environment variables predefined. Like it assumes that you would run all the adapters, and when you do, that those adapters would be available on their predefined port, like 10,001 for Linkerd, and that the address of those, well, the thing is you're using, well, I'm like, see anyway, that the address of those is available at, what is it, Meshery local dot, what is it? If you go back to Meshery's UI. To the other tab. Yeah.
All right. Yeah.
And you go to the dashboard. The chips, the quote unquote chips, the adapter chips, where it says Meshery.local or Meshery.local.layer5.io. If you were to add an entry to your hosts file to point that name to your loopback address, to your local host, you might find success. That's kind of one thing that jumps out at me. The second thing is if you go to settings, and you go to service meshes. Actually,
wait, what happened?
Yep, you were in the right place. Under service meshes settings, I'm sorry, the middle tab called service meshes. And in here, if you type into this box, localhost : 10,001, and then you hit return, and then you click the button connect. By the way, so Manav, I get to pick on you for whatever reason. This, and actually Aditya, I know you're actually trying to work on this type of UI component. That UI component like requires that you hit enter and then hit the button. It's kind of weird. But anyway.
All right.
Yeah.
But anyway, so if you're running Linkerd, okay, so that makes sense right there. That's actually a great error, or a great, it says it can't initialize the connection to the adapter because it can't talk to, the cube config is not configured. While that shouldn't be the case, while it shouldn't be the case that, you know, while it's ideally not the case that an adapter requires Kubernetes connection, it is the case, and like it's probably fine. Like none of the service meshes that are out there today run out of context of Kubernetes. So it's fine that there's that dependency, but in your environment, it seems that your Meshery server is not necessarily connected to Kubernetes. So if you go to the, click this, you're able to talk. And then what kind of Kubernetes, you have Docker desktop deployed?
Yeah, Docker desktop.
Okay. And then, all right, and let's see. So if you bring back up the logs for the server.
This one?
Yeah. And is that a trailing set of logs? Like, so can we look at the last couple of, so upload your Kubernetes, like it's like your kube config is not initialized. Like,
all right.
I wonder, can you do me a favor? Can you just go back to settings, go to environment, kill your Kubernetes connection, like X the,
like,
yeah.
Yep, this one?
Uh-huh. If you sure. If you refresh your screen, Meshery always tries to stay connected to Kubernetes. So
yep, it's good.
And then try to connect to your adapter again.
Same thing.
Oh wait, I'm sorry. Try to get the adapter chip connected. Like that's a bug right there. Like hey, if we should never see this on the UI, but if you go back to the adapter chip and you click on the chip.
Is this the one you're talking about?
Yeah, or just go to settings and do the same localhost colon 2001.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that there was a snafu with your like Meshery had an old copy of your cube config probably. So
Okay. Yeah, here's the issue. Yeah, all right.
man, we should record this and put like you're not the only one that has bumped into this. So anyway, there's a couple of things to do. One is to raise the issue about an unexpected error. Like that's probably not what we want for people to see if they don't have a particular service mesh connected or adapter connected. The
All right.
other thing that probably makes sense to raise, and there might be an open issue on this already, is probably the removal of Meshery local.layer5.io. I don't believe that that's a necessary reference any longer. And instead, like the Meshery, the Nginx one, that's probably what we're trying to arrive at. Because like even right now, you're not sure like, well, which one of those represents linker D? And so
yeah.
Did anyone else have
so should I like file an issue on removing these adapters like chips?
Yeah, not the removal of them. And actually, I've explained it a couple of times now, so probably I won't again. Like actually, I'll take that action item. But if you would take the action item to file the other unexpected error issue, that would be great.
All right.
Anybody have any comments or questions about what just happened here? Cool. Okay. Hopefully that was helpful to somebody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah. No, and Aditya, by the way, it's like that was a kind of a cruel trick, right? Like there was something amiss where Meshery is able to connect to Kubernetes and it's saying it's connected, and then on the setting for the settings for the adapter, it's saying actually your kube config is not correct.
Not
so
initialized.
Yeah. There's a scenario in there that we probably should be aware of.
All right.
Utkarsh, you're taking notes on that, I suspect. Okay. Right. Does anybody have anything else for today? Hopefully we'll see people at KubeCon for the Meshery session, for the service mesh performance session. It's really late for some of you. There'll be a number of you that are hopefully there representing. We also are quite involved in the service mesh working group in the CNCF. So really like the service mesh performance meeting that is held every other Thursday, we're going to turn that, it's basically that has been the CNCF service mesh working group meeting, because we talk about get Nighthawk, service mesh performance, service mesh patterns, testing in the CNCF lab. And we talk about SMI conformance in there as well, because the 30-minute SMI call that Bridget manhandles, you can't get shit done. That we're going to give an update at the there's a third talk that we'll give. It's the CNCF tag network. So things that you all work on will be represented there as well. We'll send out an email with the links and things so that you all can join if you've got time. So.
All right, then we'll see everyone at KubeCon. Bye.
By the way, so we wouldn't have this meeting next week, I don't think. That's probably right? So we'll have to send out a cancellation, but yeah. See you at KubeCon. Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank
bye.
you. Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
Policy